Many have logged in, but we're awaiting a few more. We will begin in 2 minutes. Okay, good morning, everyone. This is Colleen Florio at the Adirondack Health Institute. I also have Heather Bradley and Dan McGovern here with me at AHI. Welcome to the webinar on the Integrated Delivery System project team. I think it'll be a relatively short team and is a little different from some of the others. There will be time at the end for questions and answers. I'd like to go over some information with you in the slide deck first, and then we'll have time at the end for discussion. For those of you who aren't as familiar with requirements, the Integrated Delivery System project, its requirements are very broad. The Integrated Delivery project is really the umbrella project that encompasses all the things that that a network that can perform under a value-based payment methodology would need to accomplish. So creating an integrated delivery system to be able to perform under pay-for-performance or value-based contracting would include, establishing a network that is comprehensive, that has representation across the full care continuum. Those partners have IT infrastructure in place that enables communication and coordination across settings of care, as well as performance monitoring. The integrated delivery system would include primary care practices that by year 3 of the DSRIP meet NCQA 2014 Level 3 patient centered medical home status. The integrated delivery system project also includes a requirement that the network be engaging in discussions and negotiations with managed care plans for new reimbursement models. So given that, given what I just described, I think much of the work that needs to be done by that project is being undertaken through the governance and the related committees. So the steering committee has responsibility for overseeing the development of this integrated delivery system. Although the governance is not yet fully established, it would be under the purview of, say, a network committee of the integrated delivery system to work on network adequacy. There is a health information technology work group in place that is making progress on the HIT plan that will eventually come up communication and involvement in the integrated delivery system development. That the steering committee was new, the regional health innovation teams were new, and there were a lot of questions about the development of the integrated delivery system. So we did decide to go ahead and establish a team. And as part of this team, also we'll also be involved in the Project 2A2, the PCMH certification project. So at this point, we'll speak a little bit to the PCMH certification project, and then we'll revert back to the 2AI. So for PCMH certification, this project just like any of our other projects, in order to develop the work plan, instead of asking the regional teams to head that up, we contracted with a consultant, Dan McGovern, and we've contracted with Dan. He works with the primary care practices or their representatives. He works with them directly. And I think anyone who's involved in Project 2H in just a minute, but really Dan is working directly with those practices to help build that work plan in that budget. I did just want to mention that, those of you that are involved in other projects, you'll often see in those other projects, you'll see a line item requirement that the primary care practice, the non-2A2 team, those teams, I'm just to make sure you were aware that those teams are not putting into their work steps towards that PCMH certification. It's just that it's a requirement for multiple projects, but the planning and the budgeting is all being coordinated through Dan for 2A2. So those other project teams are not kind of doing anything redundant in primary care practices. There's a little bit of a pause between the slides and the voiceover. So as this next slide loads up, once that's on your screen, that is a status update on where we stand with Project 2A2, and I believe you can see it now. And I will turn it over to Dan.
It's been a fun project so far, and we've been working with numerous tax organizations to get all of the information from those practices, or actually in the case of the Glens Falls Hospital Health Center sites. Within Saranac Lake, I'm working closely with Bob Cawley here at AHI as well as Bonnie Oman at Adirondack Health to collect the information for those practices. I do see that, I have Plattsburgh and Malone in one region where I believe that it's represented within the PPS as Saranac Lake and Malone. The reason I broke it out this project is I'm working with Melissa Joyce up in Plattsburgh to identify all of the practices that overlap with the Adirondack Patient Centered Medical Home Program. And some of those are in Malone. So I'm coordinating with the folks in St. Lawrence County who is working with St. Lawrence Health System, and just making sure there's not overlap in asking each of these practices for information. So that's why I put Malone in the Plattsburgh region for this project at this point. I am certainly coordinating with all of these contacts, and we've already collected a project implementation planning template from, I believe, all of these organizations. It's certainly something that we'll have completed early this week. We've also sent out the budget. So given the revised budget template, I'll be working with each of these organizations throughout the week to accommodate any inclusions into that budget. And for this group, I just wanted to let everyone know that the approach is looking at all of the primary care practices and or hospital organizations that offer primary care, in addition to some other independent organizations that may be categorized as primary care practices by the state through the PPS network identifiers. So there is some additional legwork to be done that may not be represented on this status update, but feel free to reach out to me directly if you're not represented, or if you're a part of one of these organizations and you'd like to be included in status updates moving forward. Otherwise, I would just assume that the contacts identified here will just continue to push forward to meet the requirements and the deadlines that are upon us.
Great, thanks, Dan. Okay, thank you, Dan. So we'll shift gears back to that integrated delivery system project. Just a couple of notes about this project. Project 2AI is the only project for which the PPS is required to submit a work plan on April 1st. So it's the only project that we have to submit a work plan for on April 1st. Just this past Friday, DOH released a prototype of the implementation plan. They just released it on Friday, actually during a full-day meeting where all the PPS leads were together, and they didn't walk us through the prototype. They just released it the day we were at the meeting. So the next step for that is I'm going to review that prototype and see how complete it is, see if there's any additional information that we want to add to our draft. And what I would ask that the integrated delivery system team members do is take a look at that prototype and provide some feedback on the dates and the steps that are in the prototype. So basically, what I'm told is that the prototype lists out and has suggested dates of completion. Those target dates, what DOH described to us on Friday, is that the dates that are in the prototype are the dates that they will consider to be reasonable dates for meeting those requirements and milestones. However, you could submit a plan that has dates that are earlier. But they really don't want to see anything later than that. So the dates that they put in are the dates that they would expect that you would be able to achieve at the latest. I'm not sure how much detail they've given in the steps, but the idea is that for each requirement, we would outline some of the high-level steps that it takes to get towards those requirements and list the dates for those as well. So after, so either today, hopefully today, for the integrated delivery system team, we'll post that prototype. And we ask you to review the prototype with an eye for, would you endorse this? Do you think these are the right kind of steps and dates. What would you recommend? Would you have recommended changes? And I'll sum up any of the feedback and information back, and I will provide it to the AHI PPS, North Country PPS Steering Committee. The steering committee would be the group that is meeting here at AHI on Friday, March 27th, and the steering committee will basically need to endorse those commitments that we make for the project, for achieving the Project 2AI requirements and milestones. We'll turn for a minute to speed and scale. Many of you that are on the phone take part in other project teams, and those other project teams that you take part in are working on speed and scale templates and budgets. So I want to be sure to address those two items as they apply to the Integrated Delivery System project team. For Integrated Delivery System, there are no partner-specific commitments to speed. So what I mean by that is, unlike the other projects, we do not need the different partners to give us projected dates by which they'll meet all the project requirements. That step does not apply to Integrated Delivery System project teams. Any of the target dates that we submit in our work plan simply apply to the entire PPS network as a whole. So there's no speed table. There is a project scale component to 2AI. There isn't any information that we need submitted from this team or from any of the partner organizations. In terms of measuring project scale for 2AI, defined for this project, actively engaged is defined. You're actively engaged in the Integrated Delivery System. That's defined as the number of persons who have signed a RIO consent form. They could, if they agree or deny such consent, they simply need to have signed a RIO form. The goal would be that all persons in the service area of the PPS have in fact signed a RIO form. The Department of Health is working with the RIO statewide to develop the data actively engaged for this project. We do not anticipate any separate data stream at this point in time. So we just want to make sure that all the partners in the Integrated Delivery System know that all partners will need to be RIO members if they're not already RIO participants, and everyone in the Integrated Delivery System will need to contribute towards that goal of ensuring that all patients are given the opportunity to participate in RIO and that a form is signed. Just a little bit of detail on the measurement. That measure is simply that the person has signed any RIO consent form. So they don't have to sign a form at every network partner that's part of the PPS. Certainly, in good practice, you would want that. You would want that to have that consent in place, but it's simply measured if they've signed any consent form that given individual will be counted. So the Integrated Delivery System team is, as I mentioned earlier, this is a new team. We technically didn't have an Integrated Delivery System team last November, December, but we did get feedback that many of the partners of feedback and participation in the development of the work plans and the milestones as possible, even from groups, from individuals that may not be part of the governance. So the specific role of this team is it's in development as the PPS governance is finalized. So what I mean by that is that the PPS governance is still in flux, and although we know clearly that there's a board, there'll be a board and multiple committees, we don't have this. So I think that as the governance develops, it'll become more clear what the role in that governance structure will be for the interim groups that we have now. So it's we also delivery system team. The membership, we're well different bodies, and I wanted to make sure that you know that we're working to clarify the specific function of each of those. And I expect we can't get that 100% until we know what the governance looks like. Because really, once I know, then we know what other functions they need in terms of committees and groups to round out governance looks like, the various parts of managing the PPS, governing and managing the PPS. So I'm thinking that a good next step for the integrated delivery system would be to provide you with an update on governance and on the activities of the HIT and finance work group, and we'll cover those in relation to the 2AI project requirements. I think the goal as it progresses towards achieving the 2AI requirements and milestones. I believe some of you on the phone PPS in the same way that that executive committee of the medical home pilot functions in relation to the medical home governance. So I hope that might be helpful for some of you to kind of, but as I said, we will work to clarify the roles and functions of those different bodies and ensure that there isn't any overlap. Your next slide here shows some of the key dates that are happening in March. At this point in time, we have the opportunity to add additional partners to the PPS. A window of new partners can be added, and we have to make sure that we identify any gaps in the network, reach out to potential partners, including any who may have opted out but might want to reconsider. We need to get those partners added by March 9th. By March 13th, we'll be getting project budgets and templates, including speed and scale templates. But again, there's no speed and scale submission for this particular two. Again, would be all going through Dan McGovern. There's no additional fees to be looking for you haven't already heard from Dan about. We'll be submitting our draft implementation plan to KPMG on March 16th. They'll provide us with some feedback, and that final submission for the implementation plan is due on April 1st. The mix change, and the mix has been set up by the state as a communication platform for Medicaid redesign broadly, and really mostly being used by PPSs at this point. So the mix is a platform where you can find doing. There are different groups that you can join. I think it'll be an important. It's becoming an increasingly important tool we'll use to communicate with the PPSs and I expect it will be a tool that we will also be using to communicate within our PPS. We're going to get some instruction on how to set up for our own group, and I think that it'll be a benefit if you go ahead and get an account if you don't already have one. So the link for getting an account is shown there on your screen. As I said, I thought this would be a short one, and we'll open it up for questions and answers. If you'd like to ask a question, go ahead and raise your hand, and then I can unmute you. And we will just hold on a couple minutes here to give people a chance to click their button and raise their hand.